Man, oh man, oh man, oh man. Back to the grind, advising's over. Spring break done in the past like I don't know, something that just vanished. All gone. Welcome to the show, CJTV, Live, X, Rumble, and YouTube. Yep, we're just running on those three. So we all came back from spring break, then it was advising, and now it's ready for finals, the final exams. Yep, the stress where you get enough. Yep. Is that last piece of effort of research you're going to push that GPA up, the panic. Tonight's episode, communication barriers, special populations in Leo, law enforcement officers. It should be pretty good one. Pretty good one. As of today, with the researchers on this specific episode, Chloe Hensley, Dylan McDonald, and John Miller, 1,963 downloads in 110 days, 25,844 views. I do not know if that's accurate for the views because I don't know. Didn't check today. I think that's from last time. Not sure. You can quote me on that. Not sure. Is what it is. But these three researchers, Chloe Hensley, Dylan McDonald, John Miller, contributed to this show. And the publication is out. Let me get it up. Yes, the publication is out. It is out. Has been circulated. Was published, the white paper, so to say. It's out. So download it. It's on our Facebook page. Facebook, right down below me. Dr. Mike Gurley, CJTV. Go download it. Go check it out. It's a white paper. Gray literature. Good stuff. Systematic literature review. Special populations. Go check it out. Use it. Yes, use it. Use the sources that are in it. Use the references if you have an assignment like it in your final exam series coming up at whatever university or a great university like mine you would be at. It just depends, you know. Anyway, back to the show, back to the main skiff. Why are we here today on a Monday afternoon at 2:30? Well, when all else fails, the IDD and the police encounter. Yeah. Identity disorders. Yeah. That happens. Stimming. For those of you that are like, I've heard that word before, but I'm not really sure what it is. Self-supplementation. Supplementary behaviors. Hand flapping. Yeah. Like a rock. Shaking. Yeah. Slapping that hard rock, but you can hear it. Anybody ever seen someone wear a rubber band on their wrist? The distraction, the noise in the head, the communication, the supplementation, moving your hands, playing with your fingers. Think of a lawyer in a courtroom talking to the jury, rubbing the fingers. Yeah, the influence, the acoustic, the sound. Most autistic people, when it comes to communication in a stressful or traumatic environment, such as sometimes which would be with law enforcement due to the response, regulate their emotions differently. When the police officers encounter this irregular regulation of emotion, it's not understood. It's hard unless there's been a set need or a compendium or desirability in the department for training for this type of special needs encounter for communication. Sometimes with the autistic population and law enforcement, yes, the autistic, the incident escalates. And it's not primarily because the autism or the person that is exhibiting the unrecognizable autistic behaviors or supplementary behaviors. It's because law enforcement officers not educated. Not saying that they're, not learned, but not educated in the special need communication venue or area of stemming. Autism. Those that stem, self-regulate, self-change the emotion. Unfortunately, studies in the United States indicate that autistic individuals and their families often fear police contact. Why? Because of the situational escalation that has a higher likelihood of occurring, not due to intentional from law enforcement, not due to intentional escalation from the family of an autistic or special needs person or the autistic individual themselves. It's the lack of recognition of the emotional change, the kinetic physical shift, the behavioral supplementary actions that happen during the incident, during the traumatic incident, during the crisis intervention, even during the de-escalation attempt. There is that fear. And unfortunately, research has proven that and shown that. But don't believe me, download the white paper at Dr. Mike Gurley, CJTV, Facebook. It's published. It was also pushed out on X, too. On X, it's Dr. Mike G, CJTV. It was also put out there, too. So go, feel free, download it. The research that I'm talking about with the possibility of escalation emphasizes that reorganizing or finding a stance for understanding the differences is the primary problem. Behaviors such as actions appear to be consumed together, linguistically, verbal, and action. The interpretation by the law enforcement officer is not conclusive in the area to where there is a null hypothesis, because the officer understands that they're dealing with stimming, supplementary behavior that contradicts the verbiage, the linguistic from an autistic person. Autism. The brain, the body are working separately, but yet conditioning to one incident. Trauma. The moment. The crisis de-escalation. The interdiction at the moment. So, law enforcement, the community, it's kind of a trust build. How do you build the trust? You recognize the need for the education and communication with special needs communities. And we're starting out with autism and autistic behavior because it's one of the predominantly more recognizable problem areas in research and law enforcement. Stimming and the sensory overload. Now, this could, I don't want to say, could happen with just solely autism, but stimming and sensory overload. Stimming refers to the repetitive movement or sound, period. Repetition given by the person, the repetitive movement. Somebody not necessarily would have autism, but a distraction or a focus dilemma or a focus anomaly that they've been, diagnosed with. Not, ADHD, because you can't pay attention because your brain's too busy doing something else that you want to do because you don't want to be in the moment doing what you have to do. But rubber band on the wrist, shaking the foot, shaking the leg at the knee, the sensory overload, like rocking back and forth in the chair, repeating specific words because those words have meaning to the person that is repeating the words, the stimming. Interview and interrogation, I, the commitment, me. It's a stimming. You're committing to innocence. You're committing to guilt. If you really want to be, known as guilty or confess to being guilty. It's the sensory overload. Sensory's overload when the brain receives an indifference. Yes, an indifference. The indifferences of the moment, the trauma, the room, the officer, the force continuum, the officer presence, then the verbal command, the verbal instruction. The questioning is verbal command because the questioning is a response for an answer. Yeah, the questioning. Officers repeat the question. So officers stem as well. So, wow, look at that. The officers have a communication problem as well, just as much as someone with autism. It's the repetition. Sometimes it's insulting, yes, to society, the repetition of questions. Ask once. You didn't need to ask me twice or 3 times. I heard you the first time. Insult, emotion, it happens. The brain sensory, lights, sirens, the touch of the officer, the trauma, the restriction, the stripping of the freedom of movement. It's that sensory overload. The stimming is going to occur. Officers need to recognize that the, covering the ears and shutting the eyes is not resistance. It's the coping stimming. Coping stimming. Sensory overload. The body's got to cope. The stimming, the action, shaking the fist, turning the head, rocking back and forth in a chair, shutting the ears. blocking the sensory overload, closing their eyes, covering the eyes. Hear no evil, see no evil, say no evil. Law enforcement has got to pick up on the signals. Now, we're not downing law enforcement. We're not downing autism. We're not downing special needs communication tactics or skills. We're simply showing what the research says in the publication and talking about it here. The freeze response. Yeah, freeze, not moving. The fear, the non-compliance. The non-compliance through interpretation of freezing means refusing to follow orders, but the autistic individual may experience that freeze response, literally, not move. The eyes still, the entire body still, the central nervous system locked up like a rusted brake drum. Why? Sensory overload. The brain is working in hyperdrive, much like a spaceship going into super hyper warp into the stars. But the brain is there working at that super warp engine speed, but the body's not responding. Sensory overload. Cerebral cortex, central nervous system, working in multiple different directions, but the brain is still functioning correctly. Yes, correctly, as someone with autism would function. That brain would function. Not like you with non-diagnosed autism. The brain works at a autistic level in overdrive during the traumatic moment, during the sensory overwhelm, during the unrecognizable or unintended stemming actions. Unfortunately, law enforcement doesn't recognize this. Sometimes it's seen as that retreat, that refusal. The execution of the orders, the functioning challenge. Yeah. Executive functioning is a brain's ability to plan. Yes, you're asked the question. You're asked the question 3 times. It's insulting. So you plan a witty comeback or an insulting comeback too. The brain plans. The executive function, executing something, the process of processing information quickly and switch between the tasks. Linguistic or process and turn it into linguistic venue. Special needs, special community, communicating with special populations in society that have those unintentional barriers that law enforcement doesn't recognize. That's what's deep into the research for what we're talking about today. Please go download it. It's on our Facebook page right below me. So let's talk about a few things, opening up with a hot topic and something that some people in society have had to deal with because of the autism or caregiver communication protocols for someone with autism, autistic. Nothing good, nothing bad here, just pure plain research. And all of that I just talked about, just opening up now, was Wallace et al., all of the researchers with Wallace in 2022. And we got a bunch of stuff from 2023, 2024, very little from 2025 published in this thing because it's not enough time for peer review, so to say. Good information, but nothing I'm going to throw out there because there's not enough peer review in my scholarly opinion. As a PhD and a professor. Yeah, not enough. So we included just a drop in the bucket. Let's talk about a few things. Communication. IPV, intimate partner violence. Yes, we're not talking about domestic violence. We're not talking about what constitutes domestic violence. We're talking about the means, physical, sexual, psychological harm, the current, the former partner, the spouse, the friend, the limited English proficiency as well within the special populations of society. Limited English proficiency. That does not mean that someone is from another country or migratory that speaks another language. That means pronouncing the English language, cognitively interpreting the English language. For some of you, it's a car. For some of you, it's a vehicle. For some of you, it's an automobile. For some of you, it's your ride. The English language, the multiple use, the harm, the proficiency that creates the double blind situation. There are no good options because one does not understand the linguistic venue because law enforcement or the caregiver community protocols or the person that is the IPV, intimate partner violence participant, is not explaining it correctly. It's not being broken down. Some people in society with special needs, disabilities that one in society would not even recognize have difficulty with the direct language that they learned from, developmental phases, not secondary languages, but the primary language of their culture, their subculture, understanding it, displaying it, interpreting it. It's kind of like patterns. I had trouble with that forever, ever. Just that one little pattern. Yeah. Some people can't say spaghetti. Yeah, just fungle it up. The English language. Cultural responsiveness. Yeah, which means understanding how different cultures and the background of those cultures shape reactions in the communication platform. Communication, words, when to respond, when not to respond. Even those with disabilities, mental, physical, they're different within cultures. They're different within what you would perceive to be, well, that's my culture. They're American. Well, you're from up north. You're from New Jersey. And then you've got somebody, down deep, and I can't do it, but, the Texas accent way down deep south in Texas. Different culture, subculture. When the communication is supposed to be made, when the interruptions, when the insults, when the hold back on the insults. Let me shut this down. The 3 researchers for this and all our downloads. So the time for the insults, the time for the, let's redact the insult and not do it. The culture response, the shape of the authority. Yeah, the shape of the authority in culture. What one would say and would not say to law enforcement with mental dilapidation, physical dilapidation, mental illness, physical illness, whatever it would be. Culture aids in that developmental of communication fracturization. Yeah. The stimuli, the crucial need of why we must have communication is different in culture and different subcultures. Migrant communities, your community. Are you scared of the police? Some in the United States would just say, oh, I'm scared of the police, the American police. But you've never really experienced what someone in the country has experienced with a violent police authority. Yeah, you haven't. You haven't done that. Different groups linguistically expressing their fear of law enforcement, but you've never really truly experienced true trauma and harm as others would linguistically communicate it to you that they have experienced it in another country. Kind of makes you, I don't know, if you're smart, glad to be where you're at right here in the good old USA, because some cultures, some subcultures with diversity dislike, but hang people from a bridge, throw them off a building. Yes, they would. We'll have a show about that. Somebody make that request in an email. Anyway, we're live, X, Rumble, YouTube. Put a thumbs up or a 5 and a 5 in the chat if we're good audio and video. Let's move on to, the bystander translator. Oh my God, the bystander translator, the trap. The one that is translating for you to the law enforcement official, or you're the law enforcement official to Leo, and you don't really know what's going on, but you've got somebody that wants to step in and be the protocol of communication for the one that you really need to talk to, but you just can't understand, or they can't understand you because of mental illness, abnormality, cultural difference, deficiency, who knows. This bystander transfer trap occurs when the officer uses bystanders, especially children. Yes, children are not proficient in the language of a culture that the direct adult would have in the language of that specific culture. It's not there. All of you know it. It's not there. So children, they're going to misunderstand, miscommunicate, misinterpret the use of the word. Misinterpret it. Fear, force. It's a child being put on the spot and at times forced to interpret and disclose to law enforcement. Now, this is not to say that the bystander trap is not the adult trying to pull a buffoonery trick on law enforcement and, I know sprechen Sie Deutsch, or, understand the language of the society or the culture that the one is in the moment. And the child is used as a translator trap. That happens too. All of you know it, and some of you have probably experienced it or seen it. I know I have. Not a whole lot predominant in my career, but I've seen it with adults, and especially with adults that are deaf or mute. ALS or BLS. Yeah, the interpretation of it. So that's why it's critical for law enforcement to learn ALS or BLS, American Sign Language. Well, ASL, American Sign Language, and British Sign Language, BSL. Doing multiple things at once. Oh, look at that. Dyslexia. Look at that. The communication. Oh, my God. Neighbors, abusive partners. Yes. The interpretation, the bystander, the translator trap. Information that is controlled. Information that is restricted. Information that is used verbagely choosy. Tasting the words before they leave the lips, so that one that is the translator trap is not self-incriminating. They're not making themselves out to be the bad guy because they're leaving the communication data out that the law enforcement officer needs to know. That is also known as a form of psychological stimming. The brain is working. The brain is fixed. It's functioning somewhere else, while what should be happening in the moment is authenticity, true, 100% factual, credible truth, communication. But stemming of the brain is acting to the emotional stress, the trauma, the turmoil. Oh my gosh, they're here. It's an intimate partner violence interview. Not to be confused as domestic violence, all right? A lot of people would argue it the same, but we're talking about communication. Communication. The use of the intimate partner to become the translator trap or the bystander, someone from the neighborhood. Yeah. What about the local neighbor that speaks for the one with the mental illness that lives down the street? Yeah, that critical choice of words. I'm going to tell law enforcement what I feel they need to know, when really there's no credibility or validity. It's just opinion and emotion coming from the bystander translator trapper. Happens a lot in society. Some of you have had it happen to you. Someone speaks on your behalf, and it really wasn't what you wanted to say. They stemmed a lot psychologically. This translator trap creates a power imbalance. Yeah. It's a power imbalance when the interpreter controls the information, the flow, potentially omitting or just leaving out the changing or the shift or the need for critical details and information to be delivered. Yeah. Hiding, excluding the information, protecting oneself, or protecting a specific target venue, society, family, neighborhood, friend, intimate partner, who knows? One with physical or mental dilapidation or illness. Something happened, they're involved. Got to protect my loved one that has a mental instability, mental dilapidation, mental illness, physical dilapidation. It happens more than you would know. Kind of like the false confessor to keep the loved one out of jail and out of prison. I'll confess to it. Yeah, it's the bystander translator. I'm going to give you the information I want you to know because I know my loved one was involved in this critical response moment or this incident. Communication, learning how to pick these up in law enforcement. Now, not everybody's perfect. I was never perfect at it, and there's no law enforcement officer that's ever going to be perfect at it because no one is psychic friends network. You're not going to know what's going to happen 5 minutes or 3 minutes or 20 minutes from now. You deal with it when you get there. You formulate a plan and you stem on the way there, given the information through your fantastic radio in your car. Or, you know, if you're on the cool guy side, you've got your handheld in your fast car and you're all bugged out and nothing's visible on your car because you're that local agent of population hiding. Yeah. Also known as the UC, undercover agent. Yeah. Traumatized informed language. Traumatized informed language or trauma informed language. But typically trauma informed language comes from the traumatized. Why else would the law enforcement officer be there? Why else would the police be there? Why else would Leo be there? Something's happened, an incident, trauma. Something has shifted. Now the communication, this approach recognizes that trauma affects memory and speech. Not saying that one's speech is not well defined or developed, but the memory and the recall. Now, some of you watching the show may want to recall something that happened in your past, but you have to regress, start over because wrong word, wrong choice. Yeah, trauma in speech, memory, recall at the hippocampus, the memory drawer opening up. What is it you're really wanting to convey as compared to what is it that really happened? Kind of like your bystander translator trapping yourself. Yes, trauma-informed language access. Trauma-informed practices mean understanding that victims may sometimes dissociate, mentally disconnect from their body during stress. Yeah, mentally gone. Thus, the autistic freeze. They're there, just like law enforcement force continuum, officer present. The person is there. They're just disconnected. Speak quietly. Indirect language, not direct. It requires patience. It requires repetition of the word to ensure that the person speaking with repetition or who is freezing or disconnecting is aware that you're still listening and you're still there and you're comprehending. The professional interpretation of the law enforcement officer. The law enforcement, I mean, what do you think the need for social services is? Why was social services developed and, dissemination of labor or mutual aid with law enforcement? That's why. Not every law enforcement officer knows how to interpret a mentally challenged single mother. It's just not the wheelhouse. It's not that response tool we were trained for in the Leo world, law enforcement. Thus, the need for someone who is trauma-informed, interpretive, trauma-informed interpretation, the access of chosen language, the use of direct, indirect, something that requires a lot of patience. I've seen that a lot in my career. A lot of patience, especially in investigations that involved families of sexual assault, especially children and those with special needs or the elderly in sexual assault. Professional interpretation, the rushed questioning, the fast blistering formative in the face of the one who is froze or is under that trauma language access moment. Yeah, that's destructive when you force that questioning, when you hit it like a water hose out. You're creating more damage if you're a law enforcement officer doing that. You're creating frustration into the one that you're questioning. And now the communication is going to become even more delayed. And if you're time sensitive working, yeah, that's pretty bad. You're destroying your case, if not aiding in the victimization of others when time is of value. The silent crisis, yeah, police and deaf and hard of hearing. Oh my gosh, what a real world venue. Routine traffic stops for the deaf can become terrifying. Yeah, officers to refuse to, open the pen and paper. Yeah, the pen and the paper. I'm not giving this guy my pen. He could use it as a weapon like John Wick. What is he going to throw it out of the car and poke you in the eye and penetrate your brain and you drop dead right there from instant stupidity death? No. When you see someone that actually gives you they're deaf, wake up. Have a pen. Have some paper. Single moment. Hold. Here. Go back to your car, get some pen and paper, jackass. Yeah. Go get a pen and a piece of paper. Now, why am I saying jackass? Because I've seen so many law enforcement officers that would want to try to communicate and talk and make up animal cracker monkey moves and make hand signals when the person that is deaf, American Sign Language, they're confused because what's happening with the physical display of the officer is total garbage. It's nothing. You might as well just walk up to this top flight of stairs and try to fly. Yeah, the deaf or hearing impaired are not going to understand you. Get a pen and a piece of paper. Stop being so daggum scared. Jeez. I've seen that happen a lot in my career. I mean, a lot. I've seen that with hearing impaired happen a lot. Yep, all the way to the point when I was a lieutenant commander over a detective division. I had to come out and get into a few detective investigations, but because they weren't picking up on it. It was frustrating, the detective. Yep, the hearing impaired. The communication. Yep. The lack of ability to recognize hearing impaired can create unrepairable harm to the investigation, can create harm to the relationship of the hearing impaired and law enforcement. Yes, it can, especially those that are law enforcement that are hearing impaired communicating with law enforcement that can't recognize hearing impairment. That's a big whammy. That's a double whammy show. Yes, it is. Let me see what else we got here that these fantastic researchers threw in this thing for me to make fast bullet points. Yes, and everything I'm speaking about through the researchers and some myself on this topic have resources, and for the hearing impaired and the deaf, McDonough and Patterson C 2020, and there's a secondary 2023. Yep. And all the way down to the study of highlights that auxiliary aids, tools like qualified interpreters. Go figure. Wow, qualified interpreters. Hearing impaired interpreters. How many of you are law enforcement and you work on a shift and there's not a one of your officers on your shift, let alone a supervisor, that knows drop deadly about sign language whatsoever? That's pretty bad. Pretty freaking embarrassing. Pretty embarrassing. Pretty embarrassing. Pretty bad. And they're like, well, what about your department? Yes, we did. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, we did. We did. Matter of fact, we had two. Yes, we did. Always, always. And one of them was a dispatcher, and we would have an officer rip out to the dispatch and pick that dispatcher up and right to the scene. And we had an investigator. Yep, sure did. How did that investigator know ALS, American Sign Language? Because that investigator's daughter was 100% deaf. So the whole family had to learn. Yes, so there you go. Yeah, we had it. Sometimes true real life moments create the need for communication in special populations. Look at that. It all works in a symbiotic circle. So law enforcement is not that really different from society and those that are in need of special communication. Research levels. All right. Research reveals that levels of research find that some officers view deaf people as difficult or time-consuming simply because they need visual communication methods, leading to unnecessary arrest or failure to comply. Yep, I would agree with that 100%. Why? I've seen it with my own eyes in my career. I have seen it. Yes, I have. From patrol, investigators, high-risk situations. Yeah, high-risk situations like deadly force. Yeah, I've seen it. Not just 100% stone-cold deaf, but hearing impaired from a distance. What sounds like a command to you sounds like a Charlie Brown what to a hearing impaired person. Nothing's audibly being communicated. So we have to recognize these things. Sometimes to be honest with you, a visual of the physical being can tell you. Trauma. Yes. Abnormality. Physical abnormality. Yep. Learning how to take that blinder in that fatal funnel away. The distraction, the officer freeze, the fatal funnel, the blinders. We all know what it's about. We all know what that is. If you've ever taught at an academy, you've seen it, the blinders. Yeah, especially on the range and especially in the gym when you're doing that crisis intervention and that guy's running at you with that fake blue or orange Glock knife. Yeah. And then you didn't see the aggressors coming from the side because you had the blinders on, but they were communicating to you. Yelling at you, profanities, charging you because you were about to shoot their loved one that's running at you with a knife. Communication. Oh, my goodness. Deadly force continuum. So those that are stereotyped as dangerous deaf. Yep, dangerous deaf. The ones that can't hear. The ones that are emotional. The ones that get triggered easy because law enforcement doesn't have the slow down, punch the brakes. The harmful stereotype assumes that deaf individuals who use nonverbal vocalizations, sounds that aren't words, grunts, exhales, that's the stereotype of the violent hearing impaired. Move suddenly, quickly, fast, speak loud when they do attempt to speak. It's taken as aggressive. The deaf culture indicates that emotion and attention are no threats. Deaf culture, it's expression. Kind of like when you watch the sign language interpreter, when somebody big and high class and powerful and the government is talking and someone's just spinning those hands. Yeah. The face, the head, the contortion. Sometimes it's more entertaining or more beautiful to watch the face because you get more out of it, more emotion. Imagine the people that you know that have no hearing abnormality at all. Watch their face when they talk. Listen. Listen to the exhale. Listen to the words. What did you say? Now, nobody was saying nothing. It was a simple sound that's audible that the body made after the conversation, the exhale of air. Frustration wasn't a word, wasn't a sentence. Yep, law enforcement has that dilemma with the hearing impaired. Let's cover one more. The mind over matter, mental health crisis response. Oh my goodness. Let me see. This comes from Chloe and JJ. Yeah, Kenner, Harvey, Lennox, Carroll, Broshman, and Young, 2022. Good grief. Then there's another Kenner with another all-run gap in 2023. Let's bust this. This looks pretty cool, man. Traditional placing often clashes with mental health needs because the criminal justice system was designed for punishment. It wasn't designed for the identity of the victim justice system, now was it? Yeah. Criminal justice system. Morality, ought to, ought not. The treatment or not treatment. Creating implementation barriers, obstacles, prevention of crime. Well, you're so worried about the crime in society, prevention of victimization, when law enforcement is technically victimizing society itself, when there's something recognized in society that law enforcement aids in victimization for what? No justice for that person because of the lack of communication, the barriers. How is someone with a communication barrier supposed to express it to law enforcement in the way or the means that some that are dumbed down in law enforcement? Yes, I said it. There are some law enforcement officers that are dumber than a bag of sunken bricks at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, that are not going to dedicate the time, the effort of the communication. Verify, validity, credibility, bona fide on both sides that the information that the law enforcement officer is acting on is 100% what the communication is from the special needs individual in society. Implementation barriers, structural procedures, things that need to be developed and broken. Yeah, developed and broken. Developed and broken. Why would you develop it and break it? To find the flaw, to find the area where redevelopment needs to occur to make mental health communication and crisis situations better. We teach crisis intervention, critical incident response. Sometimes the communication is forgotten. Officer presence, verbal command. We see it in one force continuum level, but we don't see it in simple communication. Creating implementation barriers. That's what the CJ system does. Yes, obstacles. Sometimes communication between the non-hearing impaired is difficult. Imagine those that are hearing impaired, orally challenged to communicate. Yeah, almost difficult, if not yet just disheartening. Want to quit. Yeah, sometimes even in historical venue of research and the criminal justice systems and the Innocence Project, false confession out of frustration, fear, trauma. Might as well confess, even though you didn't do a dadgum thing. Yeah. For those of you that don't believe what I'm saying, don't believe me, just go find the Innocence Project. Look into their research and their good work. Pretty good work since they started. All right, so the mental illness, something simple just to cover. Nothing hard, but when communities lack critical crisis, incident stabilization, the safe places other than jails and communities or trauma rooms, so to say, for I&I, yeah, then the people have a right to fear law enforcement. And I'm prior. They do. When law enforcement negates that, the fear is already there. Law enforcement failure has already been recognized. Officers have to make a choice. Listen, but still arrest the people when they need to be arrested. But experience the psychiatric and psychological moment as well. You're not supposed to freeze. Officers aren't supposed to be the ones that are practicing the STEM, auditory, physical. You're supposed to be watching for it, recognizing it, understanding it, slowing the wheel down. I know, we've got calls backed up. The lieutenant, the captain, the chief wants us to not spend as much time on calls. Screw them. Screw your captain, screw your lieutenant, screw your sergeant, screw your chief. Because the thing that you miss could be a communication foundation traumatic situation in the future that you missed because you didn't catch it because you're on that spin wheel of speed. Yes, thinking that it's got to be that qualified clinician available, somebody that should be embedded with the police department. But we don't have that. We do the best we can. Do you? Really? The best you can is recognizing the need and seeking training. Yeah, seeking training. If you're an agency or a law enforcement officer and you see this video, reach out to me. Trust me, I'll find you free training. Yes, free. Yeah, free. Everybody likes free. That magic number of free. I don't know. So many things we could cover. So much time. But it is Monday and school's in session with the last part of the semester. And we got other things. I just wanted to throw a little bit of information out there. It's the hook for this. Let me open this up again. Yep, there it is. It is the hook for something called the research. Go download it. Facebook, Dr. Mike G. Gurley, CJTV. And it's on X too, for those of you guys that are out on X. I published it out on X too, but it's out there. I would publish it out on all of the social media video platforms, but that's not like file upload. I don't think they like the file upload myself. It's just all video. I understand. I'm cool with it though. I'm cool. All right. There it is. It's out there, people. It is out there. It is out there. Go download it. Go read it. Good stuff. Dylan McDonald, JJ Miller, and Chloe Hensley. Awesome work. Semester is just about over. Semester is closing down. It is. If you got any good topics, email it to the show. Like I said, this one was a quickie, real fast. Go read the research. Become a scholar yourself. Hope you enjoyed the show. Time to go grade some work. Have a good day.